So now we come to the content of that surge in nationalistic sentiments. So this comes from a few years I spent sort of lurking around the internet around these times that people were really first getting riled up about South China Sea issues. Essentially these online comments, at least at the time, it's a bit of a thing of the past now. In Xi Jinping's era, the Liu Bianbai, the comment section of news articles on websites is much more tightly controlled, and there's much less scope for interesting conversations to happen there. But around the time of 2009 to 2013, it was quite a different situation, and it was a little bit like 𝗘𝘃𝗲𝘁, or maybe more accurately compared to 小字报, where people would post their views in a public place, and have other people come and make comments on the views that they posted in public. So next slide, please. So what we find in this wave, beneath this wave of national feeling towards the South China Sea issue from 2009 through 2013, is really an overwhelming sense of grievance against the party state for allowing this situation to persist. And it's linked to that fundamental issue that Xi Jinping himself, when he first came to power, described as being a matter of life and death for the party. It's corruption. So it was constantly being compared to, they don't want to assert the South China Sea claim for real because they're too corrupt. They don't really care about the nation's territory. This was a good one. Their bottom line is Beijing's second ring road. So when these small countries will reach the second ring road, that's when they'll start to actually defend the nation's claims. Next slide, please. We've got a few more examples. So there was a particular surge in this on the 20th of July of 2011, which was widely condemned, including on Weibo actually, which is generally regarded as at the time, as the more liberal social media. But Weibo turned very, very nationalistic, describing it as another 国耻日. That was the day that in the morning, China announced a new agreement with ASEAN countries on the implementation of the earlier declaration of conduct of parties in the South China Sea. So it looked, people didn't really know the details, but it looked like China had signed up to an agreement, a sort of peace agreement in the South China Sea. On the same day, 5 Filipino MPs visited the Philippines' largest outpost in the Spratly Islands, and that was then in turn relayed back into China via online media. So the internet just explodes in this kind of rage, and you have this kind of narrative where people are kind of linking it back to that idea about the century of humiliation, where the idea is that China was bullied by the strong imperialist great powers, 列强欺负, except that this time they're kind of semi-humorously referring to it as the 列弱欺负, which is like bullied by the feeble powers, is how I've translated it. Next slide, please. This is clearly not beneficial to the party state. So this underpins my contention that this is popular nationalism. This is not state-directed narratives. It's also very clear that there's a strong strain of racism and othering underpinning this sentiment. I'll leave it there. I don't think the picture needs too much explaining, but 𝗱𝗲𝘁 and 猴子 were widely used terms of denigration of particularly the Vietnamese and Filipinos. Next slide, please. And it also translated into sporadic offline mobilizations. Aside from some direct action taken by patriotic hacking groups, there was online petitions going around, and among overseas student communities there were small protests and maybe even attempts, based on some Chinese sources, attempts at mobilizing protests within China, which were suppressed.